topic is about prose. So after listening this lecture, students will be able to explain literary writing prose, differentiate between prose and poetry, use code switching, understand short stories, appreciate standard English prose. So these are the sessional objectives. But in this session, we will discuss about introduction to prose, then types of prose, narratives, and elements of prose. So, firstly, what is prose? So, prose is a word that is derived from a Latin word prosa, part of the phrase prosa oratio, meaning straightforward speech, a natural flow of speech. So, prose is written or spoken language in its ordinary form without metrical structure. So, it is written in full grammatical sentences which then constitute paragraphs. Unlike the verses, when we talk about poetry, so poetry is written in ungrammatical sentences or in a verse style, whereas prose is written in full grammatical sentences which is then constitute paragraphs, whereas in poetry there is no paragraph or there is no constitution of paragraphs. So prose is the type of writing that is usually used or adopted for the description of facts or the discussion of ideas. So prose is a type of literature that does not follow any particular form or structure and is considered as the ordinary form of spoken or written language. So prose is written without a formal pattern of verse, rhyme, or meter often found in poetry and is usually grouped into paragraphs. So although some works of prose contains traces of poetic devices such as meter, rhymes, etc., but that kind of conscious blend of poetic devices and ordinary languages is known as prose poetry. So prose has sentences arranged in paragraphs. The information presented is more matter of facts many times than in poetry. The language of prose is straightforward with less figurative language than poetry. So poetry has a different form than prose. Where prose has paragraph, poetry has stanzas. Where prose has sentences in a paragraph coming one after another, poetry divides into shorter lines with a phrase or group of words that join together on each line. Poetry is created with figurative language such as poetic devices, whereas uh, prose is actually presented on matter of facts and is written or arranged in a paragraphic form. So what are the types of prose? There are two basic types of prose. One is called as fiction and other is the non-fiction. So fiction is the short story or novel or novella or folk tales, legend, fables, parables. These are actually the fictions. And the other is non-fiction. Non-fiction is the biographies, autobiographies, history, letter, diary, journal. These are actually non-fictions. Fictions are which is based on imagination or imaginary writings, whereas non-fiction which is based on real or true stories. So biography, autobiography, history, letter, diary, and journals are written in a true form, whereas fictions in which short story is there, novel is there, novella or folk tales, legend, fables, parables, these are written in a imaginative ways. Elements of narrative. So narrative is telling stories, true or false, factual or fictional, in any medium is called as narrative, and is any activity which results in a story being told and an event represented and reported is called as narrative. And narrative have different elements. So there are two major elements in a narrative text: story, what is told, and discourse, how is it told. So that is the two things. And the third one is elements of a prose fiction. So there are five basic elements of prose fiction. So first element is plot, second is character and characterization, third is setting, and fourth one is point of view, and fifth one is theme. So plot is the structure, framework, or skeleton of the story. So the story arc that holds all the events of a story in an orderly way is called as plot. So the casual and logical structure that connects events is called as plot. And what are the steps of plot? That is actually the steps of plot given by Freytag's pyramid. That is introduction or expositions, introduction to complications, that is rising actions, and after rising actions then comes the climax, and after climax then comes the falling down or denouement, and after denouement comes on to the resolution. Resolution is the end of the story. Like exposition is the introduction, resolution is reaching on to the conclusions. So plot, introduction, exposition is the beginning of the story where characters and settings are established. That is introduction. Introduction to rising actions, that is the complications that arises when the character takes steps to resolve their conflicts. And from rising actions to climax, the turning point of the story, and it meant to be the moment of highest interest and emotions. And from climax to falling actions, the conflict is in the process of being resolved or unrevealed. And the last one is the resolution, denouement. So when the problem conflict is resolved and the story ends, that is called as a resolution. So these are the five steps of or five stages of any plot. Now, after that comes the character and characterization. So, character, a person or being in a story that performs the action of the plot, that is called as character. Then comes the characterization. The process by which the writer reveals the personality of the character is called as characterization. So these four types of characters are there. Some are called as antagonist, the others are protagonist, dynamic, and static. You better know about these four types of characters in a story. Then direct characterization and indirect characterization. Direct characterization is that he was simple, good-natured man. He was moreover a kind neighbor and an obedient, hand-picked husband. That's actually a direct characterization. Indirect characterization, I jumped up, knocking over my chair, and has reached the door when Mama called. Pick up the chair, sit down again, and says, "Excuse me." That is from Scarlet, I guess by James Hurst. वहाँ से ये extract किया गया है. So that's indirect characterization. I jumped up, not he was simple, good natured. So that's what the difference between the two types of characterization. The next one is the setting. The historical time and place and the social circumstances in the world of literature is called as setting. So in setting, we look into the geographic locations, which is said to be the topography, then on cultural backdrop, that is the way of life, artificial environment, that is building, properties, that is furniture. That is what the setting is like, as he is to look at. So in his apartment in the dusk of the present afternoon, rusty, out of date, withdrawing from attention, able to afford it, heavy, broad-backed, old-fashioned, mahogany and horsehair chair, not easily lifted, obsolete tables with spindle legs and dusty baize cover, presentation prints of the holder of great title in the last generation or the last but one, environ him. A thick and diny turkey carpet muffles the floor where he sits, attended by two candles in old-fashioned silver candlestick that gives a very insufficient light to his large room. So the next is point of view. So point of view is how an author tells his or her reader about a character. So first person, second person, third person, omniscient, जो third person limited. So that is the fourth type of point of view involving the use of either of the two pronouns I and we, that is the first person, or implying the pronoun you, that is second person, entering the thought of every character, that is the third person omniscient, and entering the thought of one character, that is the third person limited. So that is four type of point of views that are actually being used by the authors when he is actually shown different type of characters in his writing. So point of view I have of late, but Wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth, forgone all customs of exercises, and indeed it goes so heavily with my dispositions that this goodly frame, the earth, seems to me a sterile promontory. That's actually some extract that's taken from Hamlet by Shakespeare, in which he uses the first person I and I. Likewise, Harry had taken up his place at Wizard School, where he and his car were famous. But now the school year was over, and he was back with the Dursleys for the summer, back to being treated like a dog that had rolled in something smelly. That is Harry Potter and Chambers of Secrets by J.K. Rowling. So that's what the point of view in which first person or third person is being used. The next one is the theme. So theme is a main idea or an underlying meaning of a literary work that may be stated directly or indirectly. That is called as the theme. The examples of theme are, that is love and friendship. Another theme is war. The third theme is crime and mystery. And fourth theme is revenge. So when we are going to write something, or when writers are going to write something in a prose way, so prose style of writing involves those four type of themes, either love and friendship, or based on wars, or based on crime and mystery, or based on revenge. A good prose is accurate, being appropriate and correct words. So it is using appropriate and correct words. Another quality is it is a brief. The third one is a good prose is a clear. Then a good prose begins and ends properly. A good prose is a logical, and a good prose is written in a good handwriting. So that's the qualities of a good prose. And the last one is thank you.
अजीज तलबा, उम्मीद है कि इस टॉपिक के अंदर कवर किए गए तमाम सवालात के बारे में आपको समझ आ गई होगी। अब नए सेशन में नए टॉपिक के साथ दोबारा से मुलाकात होगी। तब तक के लिए मेरी तरफ से अल्लाह हाफिज़। अल्लाह आप तमाम का हामी और नासर हो।